was working as a paramedic in London. We responded to a car accident where a man had minor injuries. While I was checking his vitals, his wife kept saying he just needs a cup of tea. He'll be fine after a nice cuppa. I explained he needed to go to hospital for observation. She insisted, no, tea first. That's what he needs. Can you make him one? I told her we don't carry tea in the ambulance. She looked appalled and said, what kind of emergency service doesn't have tea? That's basic care. Her husband, still dazed, agreed and said, yeah, I'd feel much better with some tea. They delayed treatment for 20 minutes while she fetched a thermos from their car. I work at a counselling centre in Manchester. A British woman came in for her first session about grief after losing her mother. I asked how she was coping. She said, oh, I'm managing. I have about 10 cups of tea a day. That helps. I gently suggested that while tea is comforting, she might need additional support. She looked confused and said, but tea is what we do. When something bad happens, you put the kettle on. My mum always said tea fixes everything. I explained that grief requires processing, not just distraction. She said, I don't think you understand. A proper cup of tea can solve most problems. She genuinely believed tea was therapeutic treatment and seemed offended I was suggesting otherwise. I was a firefighter responding to a house fire in Yorkshire. After we extinguished it, the homeowner, whose kitchen was destroyed, said to us, right, who wants a brew? I'll put the kettle on. We pointed out her kitchen was burnt and unsafe. She said, oh, I've got a camping stove in the garage. Won't take a minute. Her husband agreed, saying, these lads have worked hard. They deserve a proper cuppa. We explained we needed to leave for other calls. She looked disappointed and said, you can't leave without tea. That's just rude. She actually tried to delay us leaving the scene so she could make tea, despite having just lost her kitchen. I work at a hospital in Bristol. A British patient was told he needed surgery. He looked worried and said, can I have a cup of tea first? That'll settle my nerves. The surgeon said there wasn't time. He said, surely there's time for one quick cup. I can't go into surgery without tea. It's my routine. His wife backed him up, saying he always has tea before anything stressful. It's essential. The nurse explained he needed to be fasting. He said, well, that's a problem. How am I supposed to cope without tea? They actually delayed the surgery by 30 minutes while they convinced him that he could survive a few hours without tea. He was genuinely more worried about missing tea than the surgery itself. I was working at a funeral home in Liverpool. A British family was arranging their father's funeral. In the middle of discussing burial options, the eldest son said, right, shall we break for tea? I told him we were nearly finished. He said, no, we need tea. This is too much to discuss without a proper brew. His sister agreed, saying, Dad would want us to have tea. He always said tea makes difficult conversations easier. They insisted on stopping the meeting, went to a cafe and came back 45 minutes later with takeaway cups. The brother said, see, much better. Everything's clearer after tea. They couldn't handle emotional stress without tea as a coping mechanism. I work as a relationship counsellor in Birmingham. A British couple came in for marriage counselling. During a heated argument, the wife suddenly said, I think we should pause and have tea. The husband agreed immediately and said, yes, let's make a brew. We can't talk properly without tea. I explained that we should work through the issue while emotions were present. The wife said, no, that's not how we do things. You have tea, calm down, then discuss. Her husband said, our parents always stopped arguments for tea. It's the British way. They refused to continue the session until I allowed them a tea break. They believed tea magically resolved conflict rather than communication. I was a police officer in Leeds. We arrested a man for shoplifting. At the station, he said, before we do the interview, can I have a cup of tea? I told him he'd get one after processing. He said, but I can't think straight without tea. It's inhumane to deny someone tea. His solicitor arrived and her first question was, has he been offered tea? When we said, not yet, she said, well, that's a violation of basic decency. My client requires tea before questioning. They genuinely treated tea as a fundamental human right. We gave him tea just to move things along. He took 3 sips and said, right, much better. Now I can focus. As if tea gave him clarity for his police interview. I work at a dentist office in Cambridge. A British woman was about to have a tooth extracted. She said, I'm quite nervous. Could I have a cup of tea first? The dentist explained she couldn't have anything before the procedure. She said, not even a quick sip. Tea always calms me down. Her husband in the waiting room called the office later to complain that we'd refused his wife tea during a stressful time. He said, what kind of medical practice denies someone basic comfort? The British have tea during the Blitz, and you can't give my wife 1 cup before a simple extraction. She rescheduled the appointment twice because she couldn't mentally prepare without her pre-procedure tea ritual. I was working at a job interview in Edinburgh. The British candidate asked, is it all right if I make myself a cup of tea? I'd interview better with one. I told her we didn't have time as we were running behind schedule. She looked disappointed and said, I brought my own tea bag just in case. Just need hot water. I explained we needed to start start immediately. Throughout the interview, she seemed distracted and unfocused. Afterwards, she sent an email saying, "I apologize for my performance. I really needed tea to be at my best. I don't interview well without it." She genuinely believed tea affected her professional abilities and used it to excuse a poor interview. "I work at a gym in Nottingham. A British man collapsed during a workout from dehydration. I gave him water and told him to rest. He pushed the water away and said, 'Have you got tea?' Water's not doing it for me. I explained that tea is a diuretic and he needed water. He said, 'Nonsense. Tea is hydrating. I've drunk it my whole life.' His workout partner agreed, saying, 'Yeah, tea is mostly water anyway. Better than plain water, actually. Has flavour.' I insisted he drink water first. He reluctantly did, then immediately asked again for tea. When I finally brought him some, he said, 'See, I feel better already.' The water did nothing. He attributed his recovery to tea, not hydration. I was a midwife in Newcastle. A British woman in early labour said, 'I need to go home and make a proper cup of tea before this gets serious.' I told her she should stay at the hospital. She said, 'I can't give birth without having tea first. It's my energy source.' Her husband said she's right. She needs her routine. Tea, then baby. I explained labour doesn't work on schedules. She said, 'I understand, but tea is non-negotiable. Can't you make me one here?' When I brought her hospital tea, she took one sip and said, 'This isn't right. I need my own tea from home.' She was more concerned about tea quality than impending childbirth. I work at a crisis hotline in Glasgow. A British caller was discussing severe anxiety. I asked what coping mechanisms she used. She said, 'I drink tea, lots of it, about 20 cups a day.' I suggested that much caffeine might worsen anxiety. She said, 'No, tea is calming. It's the ritual that helps.' I explained the difference between ritual comfort and actually addressing anxiety. She said, 'My gran lived to 93 and drank tea for everything, never needed therapy. I think tea is underrated as mental health treatment.' She genuinely believed tea consumption was equivalent to psychological intervention. When I suggested professional treatment, she said, 'I'll think about it over a cup of tea. That usually helps me make decisions.' I was a teacher in Southampton. During a fire drill, we evacuated the building. One British teacher said to me, 'This is taking forever. When can we go back in?' 'I need my afternoon tea.' I told her we had to wait for the all clear. She said, 'But it's 3 o'clock. That's tea time. I can't function without my 3 o'clock tea.' Another teacher agreed, saying, 'This drill is poorly timed. Everyone knows British people need tea at 3. We're not productive without it.' They were genuinely more distressed about missing tea time than the potential fire. When we were finally cleared to return, they sprinted to the staff room. One said, 'Crisis averted, kettles on.' They treated the fire drill as an inconvenience to their tea schedule. I work at a law firm in Cardiff. During a critical client meeting where millions were at stake, a British solicitor said, 'I think we should break for tea before making this decision.' The client, an American businessman, said, 'We're on a tight schedule.' The solicitor said, 'Precisely why we need tea. Clear heads make better decisions.' His colleague agreed, saying, 'We never finalize deals without tea. It's bad practice.' The American looked baffled but agreed to humour them. They took 20 minutes for tea. Afterward, the solicitor said, 'Right, much better. Now we can think properly.' The American later told me he thought British business culture's tea obsession was bizarre and inefficient. I was a tour guide on a mountain hiking expedition in Wales. A British hiker twisted her ankle badly on the trail. I gave her first aid and called for mountain rescue. While we waited, she said, 'I don't suppose anyone has tea.' Her friend pulled out a thermos and said, 'Always prepared.' She drank tea while in obvious pain, saying, 'This helps more than painkillers.' I offered her actual painkillers. She said, 'No, tea's enough. My mum always said tea fixes everything.' Mountain rescue arrived and couldn't believe she'd refused pain medication in favour of tea. The paramedic said tea doesn't reduce inflammation or pain. She said, 'You clearly don't understand the power of a good brew.' She insisted tea had medicinal properties. If you've enjoyed British people's unhealthy tea dependency, give it a like and subscribe for more. Cheers.